strategy, innovation, creativity, and execution, and how those things all go together. And on a leadership journey, it's really important that we consider each of those important pieces of an organizational puzzle. So I think what we're going to start with today is a discussion about definitions, because so oftentimes I think those words are intimidating or scary, or people have preconceived ideas about whether they're good at them or not good at them. And what's important in breaking that down is to understand what the words actually mean. So let's start with innovation and the difference between innovation and creativity. So creativity is thinking up new things. Creativity is ideas. Creativity is a way to think about things that haven't been done before. Innovation is about doing new things. Sometimes we get confused. We think that innovation needs to be original, innovation needs to be creative, and creativity leads to innovation, but creativity without innovation is just an idea. So creativity is thinking up new things, and innovation is doing new things. Are you creative? Are you innovative? Strategy is a different ballgame. So strategy is about having a vision, having some goals, making some plans, acting on those plans that leads to success. Strategy is having a vision, making some goals, developing some plans, acting on those plans, and that's going to be strategic. Doesn't matter if you're having a strategic plan, doesn't matter if you're having a strategic conversation. That's what strategy means. So oftentimes we get confused about strategy. We say, oh, we've got a strategic plan, and that's because we have a plan that we've slapped the word strategic on. We don't really know why it's strategic. Sometimes we have conversations that we call strategic, and we're thinking that I'm going to have a really strategic conversation with this person. And in fact, we don't have a vision. We haven't established what our goals are. We don't have a plan. We haven't prepared for the conversation, and we don't act on that. And so a conversation may or may not be strategic. Last thing I want to talk about is execution. So without strategy, execution is aimless. Execution means getting things done. And there are plenty of people where aimless execution is the name of the game. It's about the to-do list. Those folks are busy. They are doing stuff all the time. It's all dictated by a to-do list, but it has absolutely no strategy around it. So there isn't a vision, there aren't goals, the activities aren't planned, and they're not acting in a way that gets further to achieving that vision. And so without strategy, execution is aimless. The flip side of that is without execution, strategy is useless. There's all sorts of strategies out there, all sorts of them. But if they're not executed, if there isn't any action around those strategies, then all they are plans that sit on a shelf or gather dust in an inbox, or are an activity that you did at a retreat at some point. So without execution, strategy is useless. Sometimes people think that strategists or people who have a strategic mind are better leaders, more important. But I will tell you, in my experience, the executors, the people who can get things done, are equally, if not more important. And so strategy without execution is useless. Now, you executors out there, don't think that you're better, because execution without strategy is aimless. So in our organization, we talk a lot about strengths and StrengthsFinder. One of the questions that I would ask you to think about is, how do you bring your strengths to innovation and creativity? How do you bring them to strategy? How do you bring them to getting things done? So when we think about somebody who has all of their strengths under the theme of relationship building, and that person abdicates the responsibility to be strategic or to execute, because really they're all about the people. The question is, how do you bring those strengths of being all about the people or being all about relationship building to the activity of being strategic? How do you bring those same strengths, being all about the people, to being innovative? And how do you bring those same strengths, all about the people, to getting things done? And as we start to think about that, we realize that we can't abdicate the responsibility of being innovative or being strategic. We can't leave that to one person who sits in an office and figures out what the strategy is. It takes all of us with all of our strengths to figure out how to be strategic, how to be innovative, and how to execute. So we're going to move through each of those subjects just quickly. The first one is about increasing your strategic skills, strategic thinking skills. And really, there, I'm going to talk about 4 things. The first is knowing. So when we think about knowing and how that contributes to being strategic, it's about observing trends. It's about understanding what's going on. It's about connecting the dots. It's about talking to people. It's about observing what's happening in an organization, in a program, on a team, and taking the time to reflect on what exactly that means for the future. So if, for example, in your program, you have a turnover of staff that is a revolving door, and what you hear is the reason that you have turnover, when you know and you observe, what you realize is that it's because nobody has a schedule that works for them. The question then is, from a strategic point of view, what can you do about that? What does that trend tell you? It's a good question. And I don't know the answer. What I do know, though, is if we don't stop and observe the trends and understand what's happening, then we have no chance of figuring out how to resolve that situation, how to be strategic. And what that turns out to be is one execution after the other. So what it means is that on your to-do list for the next foreseeable future, you will have hire a replacement staff without having taken the time to reflect and understand what it is that's contributing to that. The second strategic thinking skill is about thinking. And that's about asking questions and thinking. Getting as much input, for those of you who have strength in input, getting as much input as you can, and asking people to contribute to that by thinking. Gathering a group of people together and thinking about what the possibilities are. The third one is about speaking. Speaking in a way that articulates the point that you're trying to make. It comes down to a couple of things. One is, speaking in a strategic way is a skill. You need to be clear in your own mind before others can be clear about what you're talking about. And there are really, in my books, 2 strategies to that. The first is to prepare. Separation is in the preparation. The best speakers, most off-the-cuff speakers, the people who can think on their feet, are always prepared. Now, Speaking like that is a skill that you can acquire, and you will get better and better. And your preparation may well not be on a piece of paper, but it may be in your head. But speaking strategically is an important skill. And the last one was acting. And when you act, you embrace conflict, you embrace diverse ideas, divergent thinking, because what you're trying to do is to understand as many perspectives, as many other points of view as you possibly can. So knowing, thinking, speaking, and acting are all important aspects. Being a strategic leader is about asking the right questions. There's a handout around that. And there's also a summary handout on strategy and strategic thinking. But let me finish about strategy with this. There isn't a single person in the organization who doesn't have the ability to be strategic. Use your strengths to figure out how it is that you can improve your strategic thinking skills and be strategic. Because again, strategy is nothing more complicated than having an idea about where you want to go, a vision, having goals about what exactly that will look like, having plans to figure out how you're going to get there, and acting on what it is those plans tell you to do. 4 aspects to it, that makes it strategic. Even if you don't call it strategic, you are being strategic. Vision, goal, plan, act. Success. Let's move now to innovation. So innovation gets a bad rap. We think of innovation as disruptive. Think of innovation as having to turn the world on its head. And what we know about innovation is that innovation actually can be incremental. Innovation is about sorting out how to do things differently or how to do things better. And sometimes we blame other people about not being innovative. Or we think, oh, I'm not innovative. Perhaps you're not creative. Perhaps you're not the one who first comes up with an idea. But if you are the person who figures out how to do things differently, then perhaps you're an innovator. Perhaps the person you know who is the most creative, who has the most ideas, doesn't have a clue how to change things or how to get things done. That's a creative person. It's an ideas person. It's not an innovative person. The more hand in hand they go together, the better. But oftentimes the first person with the idea is not the one who has the success with the idea. And there are plenty of examples in history that actually demonstrate that. So in order to innovate, one of the best things to do is to start asking questions. Is this the right way to do this? Could we do this better? How is it that we can figure this out differently? All of those things become important questions in innovation. So we've talked a little bit about incremental innovation, which really is just minor improvements to what you're currently doing. Major innovation is something really significant. It's a change initiative. Disruptive innovation are those things that turn the world upside down. So when we think about disruptive innovation, that's oftentimes where we go with innovation. Think, well, I don't know, that's for Apple and others. It's actually not. It's for us too. We can all be innovators, but it's hard. Why is it hard? 3 main reasons. First of all, we love the status quo. We love it. We would carry on with the status quo for years and years and years because it's comfortable. It's not risky. We just keep doing the same thing that we have done forever and ever and ever. And if we're not scared of the change, other people are scared of the change. So resistance to change is one of the biggest barriers to innovation. Another one is cost. Sometimes innovation costs money. You have to invest in something to change something. An example of that is investing in a system, a technological system. So use, for example, a payroll system. Some of you might remember when we used to do manual timesheets.